Good morning, everyone. I'm in the wrong place again. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. Welcome to Essex County College if you are here from elsewhere. And for those of you who are ECC members, welcome to the Birch and to our annual Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Program. This program is always put together by the Africana Institute and Student Life and Activities. I would like to start off by welcoming you here on behalf of our president, Dr. Gail Gibson. Thank you for joining us. This program is always one that allows us to reflect upon the vision, the dreams, the hopes of our ancestors, of those who came before us. And so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Kalfani. I'm the director of the Africana Institute and a professor of sociology here at the college. We want to start our program, and we always start with libations. Libations gives us a chance to pull our understanding of the ancestors and their energy into our program so that we begin on a positive note and that we begin with their presence. So I just asked, as I pour water, we pour water to pour libations, and we ask that you say ashe afterwards. It means so be it. And you can also, you'll see that in some places they use alcohol. For us, we use water, and that water is the system of renewal. We are mostly water. This earth we know of is mostly water, and so therefore we use this as a cycle. You can bring the house lights down some, please. So we want to, first of all, be thankful of the ancestors, those who came before us, those who made it possible for us to be here today. We say ashe. Ashe. For those who made great contributions. If we look back at the world and we look over and we see all the great contributions, those from ancient Kemet and from elsewhere around the world, that those contributions provided a foundation for what became the great things that we know of today. Greek knowledge, the knowledge of the library systems, the Moors created, all these different things that came about in early centuries. We know that those things today provide a foundation for our writing, our language, our thinking today. So for those folks who made those creations, we say ashe. Ashe. For those who also made this passage, many of us came here to the Americas long before, not through a forced migration, but through choice. And so they began to carve out their way around the world and migration, and then they spread around the world and spread knowledge and spread their cultural systems. And so we say ashe. Ashe. And many of us in the African American experience here in the United States and elsewhere in the Americas were brought here through the torturous system of enslavement. And so those who came through that system, thousands and thousands, millions of people, many of them who perished in the process, and so we pay homage to their sacrifice that enabled us to be here today. We say ashe. Ashe. And for those who made it through those systems, they began to create and contribute to the world and make it this world that we know of today. We're in an air-conditioned building because there were African Americans who created air conditioning. We have stoplights outside because there's folks who made the stoplights. We have the gas mask because someone invented the gas mask. So we say ashe. Ashe. And then I ask for you to call any of your ancestors. You call their names, are celebrated, or your personal ancestors. Call their names now, please.
Nelson Mandela.
Ashe.
Martin Luther King.
Ashe. Ashe.
C.J. Walcott.
Ashe. Ashe. Ashe.
Malcolm X.
Yes, ashe. And so I want to, some of you have already mentioned, but I want to mention 4 names here today that we pay special tribute to. One is obviously Martin Luther King Jr., ashe. The other is a longtime warrior and former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, ashe. The other is a stalwart in the Pan-Africanist movement, Babo John Watushi Branch. He founded the African Poetry Theater in New York, ashe.
Ashe.
And then obviously this weekend we had the passing of, well, not the passing, but the funeral of someone who is a Newark son, someone who brought great tribute to the city of Newark and to the the legacy of people of African descent. We're going to have more remarks later, and that's Amiri Baraka, Ashe. And for all those whose names have gone unmentioned, but we know that they are here with us today, we say Ashe, 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 Ashe. Thank you very much. And so the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Program is one where we want to reflect upon not just the man of Martin Luther King Jr., but the movement of the thousands of people who surrounded his ideas. Kwame Ture once said that if you had Martin Luther King Jr. in the middle of Birmingham, Alabama, without thousands of people who believed in his ideas, that he would have been lynched. He said that if you had Abraham Lincoln at Valley Forge, that if he wasn't surrounded with thousands of people who believed in his ideas, that he would not have survived as well. So we are here because of the survival of the ideas of people who came before us. We know that those ideas are the things that enable us to galvanize around something that it lives in the spirit of the people, and that spirit speaks to people and swells up in them and motivates them to bring about change. So the changes that we experience are an example of their goals, their efforts. And so that we continue this legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. of the Civil Rights Movement, because we still have work to do. And so we have great people here to talk about that work that has to be done today. And we're going to start off, though, by one of the things that has always helped us in that connection, and then that is to lift the spirit. And lifting the spirit here today, we have none other than our celebrated pianist and director, none other than Professor Richard Austin. Let's give him a round of applause. Another celebrity in our midst, he is, and he's going to have a number that the choir, the ECC choir, is going to perform called Unity. Let's give them a round of applause as they begin. Let's give them another round of applause, please. Now, as our next group comes up, I want to just recognize a couple of people here. I want to first of all say thank you to Patricia Slade. Dean Slade, if you're in the audience, if you could wave your hand so everybody can see you. I want to thank her for all of her hard work in helping to make this possible. We also want to recognize Dr. Joyce Harley, who's up front. Thank you for joining us. Dean Steplight Johnson, and of course, President Emeritus, Dr. A. Zachary Yamba. And there's several faculty in here. I want to thank all the faculty for bringing your classes, and I want to thank MPT for their hard work for helping to make this possible. Now we are blessed with the presence of a choir that we haven't had here before, and we're going to be doing a lot more work with them. But this is the Arts High Choir, and the principal is Lynn Irby Jackson. The choir director is Dr. Jerry Ford Hayes, thank you. And the piano accompanist is Tamara Block. And so I invite now Dr. Ford Hayes to the stage to join us. We'll give them a round of applause and welcome them here. Show them an ECC welcome. before they leave. Let's give them another ECC warm welcome and round of applause. And we want to thank them especially because they walked over here in the snow, and they had two more songs prepared for us, but school closed early, so they're only going to perform these two. So let's give them a round of applause as they walk out, please. Do we want them back here, ECC? All right, you guys heard it. We are now going to move into our keynote address for today, and we're honored to have a great orator and lawyer who is going to join us here today. Someone who I met many years ago and have been in many programs that he's put together and worked on, and his wife was here several years ago and gave the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial keynote address. And so we have a dynamic duo that is a part of our tradition here at Essex County College for the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. Junius W. Williams, Esquire, is a noted attorney, musician, and educator. Now, how do you like that combination, right? Somebody who knows the law, but also works in ways to change the world in which we live based on his legal practices, and can uplift the spirit and the voice, and uplift the spirit through voice. So we're honored that he's here for that. He has been an advocate in Newark, New Jersey for over 40 years. While in law school at Yale, he commuted. Now, I won't beat him up too much for Yale. I was a Penn person, so we have a little Ivy League rival going on there, but that's okay. He's my elder, so I have to give him his due in that regard. He commuted between New Haven and Newark, where he formed and directed the Newark Area Planning Association. In 1968, as the director of that association, he was the chief negotiator for the Newark Medical School Agreement, which produced one of the first successful large-scale construction job training programs for minorities in the country. He developed and administered the Newark's first broad-based housing CDC, the Newark Housing Council, served as the director of the CDC at the Model Cities program for Newark, and was responsible for Newark's Project Rehab, which was called the best housing rehab effort of its kind by HUD. In 1978, he was elected as the youngest president of the National Bar Association, and listed amongst Ebony Magazine's 100 most influential blacks in America. Williams represented Reverend Jesse Jackson in the historical court decision to bring single-lever voting to the state of New Jersey, became counsel to the municipality of Irvington, New Jersey, and he was the township's attorney. He is currently the director of the Abbott Leadership Institute, and one of the most important things, and I think that in reference to what he's doing today, is that he just finished penning a book, and it's entitled The Unfinished Agenda: Urban Politics in the Era of Black Power. So that idea is something that reverberated. And when I saw the email came across that he had finished the book at the end of last year, when I saw that, I said, this is perfect, because we want to be addressing this notion of unfinished business. My question was to me and to us was, have we really accomplished what the civil rights movement set out to do? And I said, what better individual, what better conversation to have than someone who can bring this and who has recently drafted a book addressing this issue. And so today we're honored with the ability to have Mr. Williams give us some insights from his scholarship. And I think that, I know that he'll have books available for you to purchase afterwards, but I want you to think about the idea of the unfinished business and what your role is in that as I bring him to the stage today. So let's give him a Newark round of applause as we welcome Junius Williams to the stage. Junius Williams, everybody.
Good morning. Or is it afternoon? Good afternoon. It's good to be home at Essex County College. I say that because for many years I was a trustee here. I worked with Dr. A. Zachary Yamba. We had many good times together. For example, I was here during the era of Professor Aaron Bell, who was a bassist and a piano player, but he was a bass player for Duke Ellington. And I was able to take some courses from him. I met a lot of the singers who joined my group. We, as a matter of fact, Return to the Source was the first group to perform here in the new Murray Birch Auditorium back at that particular time. There might be some of you here who remember that, but I'm just musing right now just because I like to do that. You get older, you try to go back and get these fond memories, so just bear with me. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. I know that's what y'all are saying. Go on with the speech. But I'm not. I'm going to finish. So I want to thank Dr. Calfani for bringing me here today. I want to give greetings to your new president, Gail Gibson. And I'm just going to stay with you for a minute, talking a little bit about the question that was posed: what can we look forward to in terms of finishing that agenda, but also in the context of the man we're here to honor today, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Now, ironically, as my pastor talked about this yesterday, Dr. King did not like ceremonies and celebrations. He told us that one day somebody brought a birthday cake to Martin Luther King, Jr., and he was really upset that they wanted to have a little party. But we have gone out of our way throughout the United States now to celebrate his name in many increasingly wonderful ways, such as what we have here today. So what does it really mean? Some of us celebrate in many ways. We have sermons, we have radio programs, we have television programs, we have news articles, we have reflections, but also there are people who go to the mall, who go to even as far as St. Thomas and going to the islands and take a long weekend, and we go to restaurants and hang out all day, and we just love Martin Luther King's birthday. So you see, you have the two extremes. I would suggest that we need to think about what we are doing as we think about the man. Some of us celebrate the name of Martin Luther King that is in a form and in a fashion that he would hardly recognize. And those of us who go back to that era, we talk about him as a man of peace and love. A man of peace and love. Well, he was a nonviolent man, yes, and he said the foundation for what I do is based upon love, so there's no contradiction there. But he would be very remiss, I think he would think that we are being very remiss in our duty to him because we don't realize the other things that he was. As time goes by, that king recedes further and further into the dustbins of history. There's an article in the Star Ledger, day before yesterday, January 19th it was. It says, Martin Luther King was a revolutionary as well as a dreamer. And this is by a man named Peniel Joseph, who is a history professor at Tufts University and an author as well. And he says, yet missing from many of the annual King celebrations is a portrait of a political revolutionary who over time evolved into a radical warrior for peace, justice, and the eradication of poverty. So you see, already you have a little hint of where I'm going, and where I'm going is where King was going, and that is to see if we can fashion a movement to deal with some of these economic problems that beset us. It says, during his final 3 years, King the Dreamer turned into one of the most eloquent, powerful, and scathing critics of American society. King lent his moral force and power to anti-poverty crusades that questioned the economic system of capitalism and called for an end to the Vietnam War. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about how I came to know that other king. I'm here to tell you just to share with you some of how I learned to love him, how I then came to distance myself from him, and how I came back to understand that king from his last 3 years, that king that was lost for all that time. I want to start by just telling you a little bit about me. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, in the days of segregation. That meant that everything was separate, certainly not equal. You've seen pictures of the separate water fountains, the colored water, the white water. You had black churches, white churches. We didn't call them black at that time. I'm using that word now. Colored churches, Negro churches. We had to be buried in separate cemeteries. All of that I shared with King and the rest of us who grew up at that time, particularly in the South. Now, one strategy used by black and middle-class people at that time was for their children to get out of town and go north. Go north to what was thought to be freedom. So my mother, who was the architect of this particular plan, my father didn't particularly care for it, but my mother did. My mother decided that we would go north to school. My brother went to Princeton, I went to Amherst College. These were uniquely northern liberal colleges, but when I got there, I found that there were many friends who I could enjoy myself with, but there were some young men who were just as bad as the Ku Klux Klan down south. The only thing was they didn't wear sheets. So it was harder for me to figure out just who they were until they tried to pull the rug from under me. One day I was invited to become a part of a program called Crossroads Africa by a lady you might know a little bit about, Marion Wright Edelman, now leader of the Children's Defense Fund. Coming back from 10 weeks in Uganda and other East African countries in August of 1963, I had my first encounter with Dr. King in Washington, D.C. I wanted to go to the March on Washington. So my mother dropped my brother and I off, and she told us to be careful, son, be careful, as all mothers do. But I want to read a little passage from my book about what happened when I met or saw for the first time Dr. Martin Luther King at the March on Washington. When I arrived back in the U.S. in August of 1963, my mother and Brother Johnny gathered me up at Idlewild, which is now Kennedy Airport, and we made a stop in Washington, D.C. to visit her best friend, Charlotte Nash. She hadn't planned it this way, but our arrival in D.C. was on the morning of the March on Washington. My brother and I wanted to go, so she dropped us off somewhere near the Washington Monument with arrangements to meet somewhere later that day. While I was in Uganda in my tent, we were building a hospital there, I had seen a copy of some European or American paper that was weeks old. In it was a picture of Danville, Virginia, the birthplace of my father and the hot spot for the civil rights movement that summer. Had I been home that summer instead of in Uganda, there's no doubt in my mind that I would have been with SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, in Danville. When I looked at that paper sitting in my tent in Uganda with the picture of young black people being arrested by the cops, I felt guilty. The feeling left, but when I went to the March on Washington and saw the kids from SNCC coming out of Danville, so proud and wonderfully clear, singing all the latest songs, treated with such respect by the older middle-class professionals and union members, I knew where I belonged. I saw that their hair looked like mine, full, bushy, symbolic of pride, symbolic of a newfound lost past. They hadn't been to Uganda, and I hadn't been to Danville. We came by different paths, but we reached a point of consciousness, of understanding our Africanness at the same time. The March on Washington was a high point along the road to my movement awareness. Johnny and I were a part of history without realizing it. With so many people around, I had no idea what was being said way up front by the many speakers. I knew the great leaders in the movement were there, like Martin Luther King, but the people, those of us in the back, couldn't see them, and no one really stopped talking to listen to the words on the loudspeakers hanging from the trees and from poles. Some people sat down and conversed among themselves. Others had their feet in the water of the reflection pool. People saw friends and ran up to greet them. Most of the interesting people to me were the folks in dirty jeans and bib overalls with T-shirts or denim shirts. These were the young people who had been on the front line somewhere, and most of them were from SNCC. Of course, there were people from the labor unions, etc., but I don't remember what their sign said. I do remember the SNCC sign said, "Freedom Now." People now recite King's speech as the best thing ever. I'm talking about the I Have a Dream speech. To me, being there with all those people, many of them my own age, was a high point of my own civil rights movement. So that's how I came to see Dr. King, see in quotes, because he was way up the front. But I only had eyes for SNCC. Now, that's no disrespect to Dr. King. I couldn't see him, could hardly hear him, but I knew I belonged with the student branch of the movement and not with all those adults who were just as engaged, but certainly weren't young. Y'all know how I feel. Can I get a witness to that? But I stayed in college. I played a support role for all those on the front line in the South. I raised money. I went on campus visuals. I did voter registration. I even offered a place for the SNCC workers to stay when they came up having been beaten and put in jail. They could stay in my room if they wanted for a little rest and relaxation. And one day, I realized I had to go down south. The irony of it was my mother pushed me up north to escape, but I realized it was important for me to be on that front line with the rest of them. I could not stand myself if I didn't do it. So I went to Alabama. I intended to go on the march from Selma to Montgomery. This is in my senior year in 1965. But as God would have it, we had to go through Montgomery, and the people said, well, you need to stop at the SNCC office because they will tell you how dangerous it is on the highway. Now, notice I didn't say whether it was dangerous to go on the highway, because it was always dangerous to go on the highway, but just how dangerous. So we went upstairs to the second floor. I call it in the upper room. That sat some of the SNCC royalty, only one of which I knew at that particular time, and that was Stokely Carmichael, later Kwame Ture. So when we checked in and we told him what we wanted to do, he said, what are you going to Selma for? We need you here, with his Trinidadian accent. So very unceremoniously, we were led to the front door and told to go downstairs if you're going to stay. So we said, all right, we'll go. We thought we were somebody coming all the way down there from Massachusetts to Alabama, but we didn't seem to raise too many eyebrows except to say, go downstairs and be a part of the group. So we did. But this amounted to being invited to a bloodbath. Every time we got ready to march, police and the Ku Klux Klan, who had been deputized for the occasion, ran us down with horses and motorcycles and long sticks used to beat cows in line. This was a SNCC-run operation, and the more people got hurt over a 2-day period, the more the media started showing up, taking away attention from the main march now underway from Selma to Montgomery. And so the next day we arose from our sleeping bags and blankets on the living room floors of our host families, got ready to once again try to march downtown to the Alabama State House. The street was abuzz with the news that Martin Luther King was coming to town to lead the march. This is how I described the moment in my book. We were still confined on that corner. More and more people joined us, some black, some white. On the next day, we awoke to learn that somebody must have told Martin Luther King that things were getting out of hand in Montgomery because rumor had it that he left the line of march from Selma to join us in the hood. Despite myself, I was thrilled at the prospect of marching with Dr. King. I knew this was SNCC turf and that I was now with SNCC, but how can you not be thrilled with the prospect of being so close to the big man himself? Most of the people shared this feeling, especially local black folks. Oh, Lord, somebody said, we going downtown now. The march took an almost festive role as we awaited his arrival. There was an aura about King that was unforgettable. I see him now in my mind's eye, collected, peaceful, calm. He was in his element and totally in command of himself and the situation. I was about as far away at one point as I am to the second row here. But all was not well with our friends from SNCC. The Lord God, as he was often called off camera, was clearly not welcome there. And in a few minutes, I saw why. With King at the head of the procession, the police moved the barricades and we headed downtown for the Capitol. We had no interference from the police or the cowboys, and a cheer went up from the crowd. They were scared to touch Dr. King, I thought, and so did the rest of the crowd. He had come to lead the people, but only for a block or so. King and his entourage of Southern Christian leadership types, that was his organization, the adults in the movement, we were the young people, they were the adults, slowly marched us in a circle right back to Jackson and High Street, and shortly after, left town. Clearly, this was some move by SCLC to take the heat out of Montgomery because Selma was supposed to be the focus. This little circle step by King was supposed to satisfy us so that there would be no more need for bloodshed in Montgomery. At best, this was a humanitarian gesture by SCLC. At worst, it was one-upmanship over SNCC. Since somebody had clearly given orders to the police to leave us alone for that half an hour or so. During that little masquerade, when he turned around and went back, the cops threw peanuts at us. I think that was the worst part. The cops threw peanuts at us. And after King left, we were right back behind the barricades. The SNCC folk didn't hesitate to give us their interpretation, and King's image was clearly tarnished that day. I had heard about competition and one-upmanship in the movement, and now I had seen it firsthand. So you see, I didn't really like that. I felt we had been chumped off. So what did King miss when he left us behind on the barricades of Jackson and High Street? Well, we went to the local college, somewhat like an Essex County college. We went through the back door, recruited more students from Alabama State, brought them back to our position there. And the next day, we were twice as large. And instead of being 250, we were 500 folks. So eventually, they had to let us march downtown. So we went downtown. We marched downtown, got to the State House, picketed. The city cop said, you can't march in front of the State House on the sidewalk. So we moved into the street. The state cop said you can't picket in front of the State House, marching in the street. So we saw what the deal was, and we sat down. So they came and took us and put us in jail. There were too many people in jail, so they had to put some of us in state prison. I was one of those. Eventually, I went through prison, came out, went back to school. I can't tell you about all my adventures. If you want to know them, you can read them in the book. I'm going to have the book out front for you to buy. Time will not permit me to tell you all those stories. But when I got back to school, a man named Tom Hayden came and said, you need to come to Newark because the civil rights movement is over. Come to Newark because we're going to be dealing with the problems of race and class. Up to that point, we were only dealing with race. Race and class, harder to deal with. And yes, that has proven to be true. Remember, when you're only dealing with the Ku Klux Klan, you're only dealing with the tip of the iceberg. And that's what we were dealing with, the Ku Klux Klan, the white citizens' council, segregation, Jim Crow. underneath there's a whole economic picture that nobody had discovered, nobody had looked at. When I came to Newark, plop right on my head. So I came to Newark, and I lost contact with Martin Luther King for a while. Dr. Calfani told you about the medical school fight which I was involved in. I stopped the highway with the help of my friends in the Black Panther Party. I fought for housing in the context of the evolution of the movement called Black Power. I learned how to be an organizer, and I tried to do the work that God intended me to do. One day, in April of 1968, I heard that Dr. King was coming to speak in Newark. By then, I was too far away from King and his concept and his organization. I considered myself to be a revolutionary nationalist. I had no patience for King's words or his seemingly simple concept of justice. I didn't go to see him, choosing not to be among all those people. Some of them folks I had worked with or against in Newark, trying to get in the picture, trying to look like they were important. I had more important things to do, like organizing people to take control of the city, working in the bars and in the streets of Newark Central Ward. Within a few days, I regretted that decision. It was then, early in April of 1968, that I heard the news that the forces of evil had conspired successfully to kill Martin Luther King Jr. They had put out his light so that they could no longer shine. We may not have walked the same walk or talked the same talk, but we were on the same page when it came to that issue of justice. With his death, I felt a fury and rage I fought hard against to contain. But others didn't. And so Newark and 500 cities across America once again resounded with the cry of "Burn, baby, burn." The death of Martin Luther King sparked more riots in any 1 or 2 day period than any other event in the history of this country. Think about that, in the history of this country. And I found myself looking down the wrong end of an automatic shotgun for the second time in my young life, pointed at me by a scared young white cop as I was trying to get home to lick my wounds and cry my tears alone. With his death and upon my reflection, I realized I had misjudged him as a thinker and as a leader. As I had grown, so had he in the last 3 years since I saw him in Montgomery. I realized I had judged him based on a turf war in one particular arena. I was bogged down with words that didn't mean anything in the long run. Words like revolutionary, words like nationalist. What had I missed by distancing myself from him? Listen to the excerpts from a speech he made on April 4th, 1967 at the Riverside Church in New York City. Over the past 2 years, as I've moved to break the betrayal of my own silence and to speak from the burnings of my own heart, many people ask me, "Why are you speaking about the war in Vietnam, Dr. King? Why are you joining the voices of dissent? Peace and civil rights don't mix," they say. "Aren't you hurting the cause of your people?" And when I hear them, I am greatly saddened, for such questions mean the inquirer has not really known me, my commitment, my calling. He went on to say that clearly the path from Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, where he started in Montgomery with the bus boycott, lead to this sanctuary tonight at the Riverside Baptist Church on April 4th, 1967, about 1 year before his death. Now think about that and think about what that meant. It meant that suddenly, his movement, his SCLC, stopped getting the funds that it used to get from people of goodwill. It meant that his name was put on another list in the federal government. It meant that people were questioning now his judgment as a leader in the nation's leading papers. He went on. He wrote a book, "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?" Also in 1967. I'm quoting him. in the treatment of poverty nationally, one fact stands out. There are twice as many white poor as Negro poor in the United States. Therefore, I will not dwell on the experiences of poverty that derive from racial discrimination, but will discuss the poverty that affects white and Negro alike. Wow. He is making the jump. I'm not just going to talk about poor people in Mississippi kept in line by the sheriff's office, by the Ku Klux Klan. I'm going to talk about poor people in general. What are the things that they have in common? He then talks about the various programs designed to address poverty and concludes, at best, they are very fragmented. He says, I am now convinced that the simplest approach, I want you to listen to this, I am now convinced that the simplest approach will prove to be the most effective. The solution to poverty is to abolish it directly by a new, widely discussed measure, the guaranteed income. The guaranteed income. He's saying that if you live in America, there's enough money here for everybody. And everybody ought to get a guaranteed income. I don't know if y'all understand it, but there's a word for that. There's a word for that. And you say, this sounds a little strange. Here you have the greatest and one of the greatest and most prominent preachers in America talking about a guaranteed income, not a jobs program, and that income should be pegged to the median income of the society. That is, not the lowest, certainly not the highest, but the one right in the middle. Does this sound like socialism? Does this sound like socialism? So you see, he was on another list by the time that happened, after he did that. It's not a civil rights program. It's not a movement that he's talking about to guarantee just the right to vote. He's talking about economic equality. He's talking about moving from one place to another so that the wealth of the United States of America can be guaranteed for everybody. And then he went on to say, I hope that both Negro and white will act in coalition to effect this change, because their combined strength will be necessary to overcome the fierce opposition we must realistically anticipate. Boom. Where's the movement going? He wants to have an interracial coalition for economic justice. And if you read anything about the tent city that they set up down in Washington, D.C., that's what that movement was all about. So he became a dangerous man. The more I came to know him, the more I came to appreciate Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I have become one of his greatest supporters. I'm happy to know the real King, not just a man who gets us the holiday and thus another opportunity to go to that mall in January. Not just a man who gave us that I have a dream speech. Tired of hearing it. I don't want to hear it anymore. So instead of looking at him as the man with the I have a dream speech, we ought to call him a drum major for justice. That's what he wanted to be called. We ought to tell somebody that he was a battle axe in the time of trouble, shelter in the time of the storm. We ought to tell him that, Lord, as he might say, I ain't no ways tired. I come too far from where I started. Nobody said that the road would be easy, but I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. If they ask you where did he go, he went up the rough side of the mountain. Longevity had its place, he said, but I just want to do God's will. He has allowed me to go to the mountaintop, and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get there. And you can be sure to tell your neighbor that he was a soldier. He was a soldier in the army of the Lord. One day he got old. He couldn't fight anymore. He stood up and he fought anyhow. He had to hold up the bloodstained banner, but he held it up until he died. Now we ask, how do we do it? How could he be so consistent and persistent? He had to keep his eyes on the prize and hold on. Paul and Silas bound in jail, got no money for to go that bail. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on. Only thing we done was wrong. Let injustice last so long. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, oh. Here's the best part. Only thing we done was right was to stand up and begin to fight. You got to keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. You got to keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold right there. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. You got to keep your eyes on the prize and hold on. Thank you, Professor.
Mr. Junius Williams, everybody. And we also want to give special thanks here to the choir for joining in on his closing remarks. I would like to just take a moment to recognize the president of Essex County College who just happened to join us, Dr. Gail Gibson. If she wants to join us a little later on the stage and say a word, that'll be fine. Right now we're going to have the choir come back up and do another number for us. Coming up here, I want to thank all of you for bearing the storm and knowing that the significance of what we're doing, that the significance of being here is important. And I want to make sure all my students are taking good notes because we will be reflecting on this in a multiplicity of ways in the next few days. Amen. All right.
Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place. If you can, reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place. If you can, take a little time out your busy day to give encouragement to someone who's lost the way. Would I be talking to a stone if I asked you to share a problem that's not your own? If you can reach out and touch somebody's hand, make this world a better place. If you can, if you see an old friend on the street and he's down, just remember his shoes can fit your feet. Try a little kindness and you'll see it's something that comes very naturally. Oh, we can change things if we start giving. Why don't you reach out and touch somebody's hand? Make this world a better place. If you can reach out and touch somebody's hand, make this world a better place. If you can.
Before we have the reading of Dr. Nelson Mandela's obituary, just last week I was informed that we were going to do this, and just this morning I taught the choir the national anthem to South Africa. So would you please stand and join us as we render this in Mandela's memory.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Stephanie Aisha Steplight Johnson, the Dean of Liberal Arts. Today we are here to remember three men. Martin Luther King, and he's someone who left me with a question that we can revisit year after year. By his writing, where do we go from here, chaos or community? Nelson Mandela, who left me with my undergraduate experience at UPenn, where we fought for divestiture, looking at companies that did business that supported apartheid in South Africa. And Newark's very own Amiri Baraka, who left me with the texts that I studied at graduate school at Temple, Blues People. And I spoke with him recently in October when he presented an African Echoes lecture, and we talked about the fact that I had studied his work in grad school, and we were talking about my brother Solo, who also passed recently in September. And may the souls and spirits of all three of these men that we honor and remember today rest in peace. I will now read excerpts from the official obituary of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was considered the father of South Africa's democracy. He passed on peacefully in the company of his family on the 5th of December, 2013. He was the man who was to become one of the world's greatest icons. He was born on the 18th of July in 1918. His father was the key counselor and advisor to the Thimbu Royal House. After his father's death in 1927, at a young age, Mandela became the ward of Chief Jogantaba Dalinyibo, the acting regent of the Thimbu Nation. It was at the royal homestead that his personality, values, and political views were shaped. There can be no doubt that the young man went on to bring about some of the most significant and remarkable changes in South African history and politics. It is through Mandela that the world cast its eyes on South Africa and took notice of the severe and organized repression of Black South Africans. Yet it was also through Mandela that the world would learn of the spirit of endurance, the triumph of forgiveness, and the beauty of reconciliation. Indeed, the story of Nelson Mandela is so much the story of South Africa. He was only 25 years old when he joined the African National Congress. His political career would span decades more. As he himself said, "The struggle is my life." The young Mandela also qualified and practiced as a lawyer. Together with Oliver Tambo, he opened the first Black legal practice in Johannesburg. He was instrumental in the formation of the radical African National Congress Youth League in the 1940s, which was determined to change the face of politics. Mandela was elected the League's national secretary in 1948 and president in 1952. Much of the years that followed saw Mandela deeply involved in activism, rallying for political change against the increasingly aggressive apartheid government. He was a key player in the ANC's campaign for the defiance of unjust laws in 1952 and the treason trial in 1961. During his time, he was incarcerated several times under the apartheid laws, and he was banned from political activity. Realizing that the ANC needed to prepare for a more intensive struggle, he became an instrumental force behind the formation of a new section of the liberation movement, Umkhonto weSizwe, called MK, as an armed nucleus with a view to preparing for armed struggle. He was commander-in-chief of MK. He left the country in 1962 and traveled abroad to arrange guerrilla training for members of MK. And on his return to South Africa, he was arrested for illegally exiting the country and for incitement to strike. He decided to represent himself in court, and while on trial, he was charged with sabotage in the Rivonia trial, where he made his famous statement in 1964. "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against Black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal for which I hope to live for and to achieve. but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. Mandela and the other accused were sentenced to life imprisonment, and they were sent to Robben Island, near Cape Town. While in prison, Mandela rejected offers made by his jailers to be released on condition that he renounced violence. He said, "Prisoners cannot enter into contracts. Only free men can negotiate." He served a total of 27 years in prison for his conviction to fight apartheid and its injustices. He was released on February 11th of 1990, and he plunged wholeheartedly in his life's work, striving to attain the goals he and others had set out to accomplish almost 4 decades earlier. In 1991, at the first national conference of the ANC, held inside South Africa after being banned for decades, Nelson Mandela was elected president of the ANC, while his lifelong friend and colleague, Oliver Tambo, became the organization's national chairperson. In a life that symbolizes the triumph of the human spirit, Nelson Mandela accepted in 1993 the Nobel Peace Prize along with F.W. de Klerk on behalf of all South Africans who suffered and sacrificed so much to bring peace. The era of apartheid formally came to an end on April 27, 1994, when Nelson Mandela voted for the first time in his life, along with his people. He was inaugurated as president of a democratic South Africa on the 10th of May in 1994. This world icon worked tirelessly, even after the achievement of democracy in South Africa, to continue improving lives. Even as he retired from politics, his attention shifted to social issues such as HIV and AIDS and the well-being of the nation's children. As a testimony to his sharp political intellect, wisdom, and unrelenting commitment to make the world a better place, Mandela formed the prestigious group called the Elders, an independent group of eminent global leaders who offer their collective influence and experience to support peace building, help address major causes of human suffering, and promote the shared interests of humanity. Nelson Mandela had wives and children who were a part of his life, and we always have to remember the sacrifice of the family when they have such a freedom fighter as Nelson Mandela. May Nelson Mandela rest in peace, his soul and his spirit. Thank you.
I was glad when they said on to me, let us go into the house of the Lord. There's no better place to be. There's peace and liberty. Let us go into the house of the Lord. I was glad when they said on to me, let us go into the house of to be.
Right now.
There's peace and liberty. Let us go into the house of the Lord. Put your hands together for Essex County College Choir. I was glad when they said unto me, yes, let us go into the house of the Lord. There's no better place to be. Yeah, yeah. I was glad when they said unto me, yes, let us go into the house of the Lord. There's no better place to be. Yeah. A day in this house is better than 1,000 years anywhere. I'd rather be a doorkeeper in my Father's house than to have a palace all by myself. I was glad when they said unto me, yes, into the house of the Lord. There's no better place to be. Yeah, yeah. A day in this house is better than 1,000 years anywhere. I'd rather be a doorkeeper in my Father's house than to have a palace all by myself. I was glad when they said unto me, yes, oh, to the house of the Lord. There's no better place to be. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, come and go with me to my Father's house. To my Father's house. There's so much love in my Father's house. There's so much joy in my Father's house. Come and go with me. Come and go with me, yeah. Come and go with me, yeah. Come and go with me to my Father's house. Hey, yeah. Come and go with me, yeah. Come on and go with me, yeah. Come on and go with me. Oh, come on and go. Oh, go with me. Go with me. Oh. Go with me, go with me, go with me, go, 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 go. Go with me, come on, go with me, come on, go with me. There's no better place to be. Oh yeah. Into the house of the Lord.
We're going to have some church up in here. All right, y'all, put your hands together now. Come on. There you go. Put those hands together.
Come on, go with me. Yeah.
let's put your hands together for the choir now. Come on. Director, Mr. Richard Austin, everybody. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I'm thankful. Is that the tamborine's still going up? It sounds like we're about to come back up again. I want to first of all thank Dr. Aisha Steplight Johnson for reading the obituary or excerpts from it of Nelson Mandela. I also want to mention that as we think about Nelson Mandela, it's not just Nelson Mandela, but there was a woman who was a strong woman who helped us remember and keep the ideas of Nelson Mandela in the minds and hearts of us, and her name was Winnie Mandela. Let's give her a round of applause, because we would not have known of a Nelson Mandela if it were not for the struggles and the work of Winnie Mandela. Winnie Mandela was somebody who, when I was working as Dr. Steplight Johnson said, when I was an undergrad and we were working for divestment in the University of California system, that Winnie Mandela, her voice reverberated around town and enabled us to keep the words and thoughts and ideas and the memories of Nelson Mandela, but the struggle of the thousands of South Africans alive, and the thousands of South Africans who were spread around the globe in different places in Europe and in the United States, also played a great component, made a great significant impact on us with that regard. Now, someone who's going to help us to think about that is no stranger to the bridge between Nelson Mandela, the struggles in Africa, and the struggles of African people in the Americas. We have someone here today who is a stalwart in his own right for his contributions to the transformation from civil rights to what we have today. And we just heard that struggle isn't finished, but that to get from where we were with the Ku Klux Klan and everybody at our door every step of the way, we have a different reality today. And so we have someone here today who enabled us to do some of that, who was engaged in some of the struggle that enabled for Essex County College to be here today. And so I want you to put your hands together as we welcome the President Emeritus of Essex County College, Dr. A. Zakariyamba, to the stage. Let's give him a round of applause. He's going to show us this bridge between the civil rights movement and the African struggle and even to Amiri Baraka. So none other than A. Zakariyamba.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kalfani, to Dr. Gibson, President of Essex County College, Dr. Wilson, and to all gathered here this afternoon. And of course, to my friend, Dr. Junius Williams. He gave us just a snippet of what he experienced as a civil rights leader. What we do not recognize is that some of those legends are still in our midst. And Junius Williams is one of them. In the unfinished agenda, you will learn much, not only about his personal history, but the history of the civil rights movement. And Junius Williams, like the rest of the civil rights leaders, gave up a lot. He sacrificed a lot because he believed in a cause. He could have gone somewhere else and made oodles of money and lived a life of leisure and pleasure. But even at Amherst, it was seared in his soul. Something was pushing him. Yes, his mother wanted him to come up north and escape the segregation that they were enduring. But something in him It's almost like go back down to Egypt. And that's what he did. He did. And he suffered the trials and tribulations. This morning, when I woke up and listened to the weather report, I said to myself, I'm not sure whether this program was going to be held. And I texted Dr. Kalfani. I said, Dr. Kalfani, is this still going to be on? And I texted Dr. Gibson, and Dr. Gibson said the college was still open. Dr. Kalfani said the program was going to be on. And I said to myself, yes, I'm retired. I probably have no business going out in this weather. But when I thought about the sacrifices made by Dr. King, Nelson Mandela, Imam Baraka, and Junius Williams, I said to myself, what excuse do I have? None whatsoever. And so on the unfinished agenda, and I'll do that very quickly, there is more in this. In fact, I learned a lot about Junius than I did in all the years that I've known him. And we shall talk about some of his escapades in Uganda, but we will not dwell in that today. And when Dr. King came through Newark, there was talk about burn, baby, burn. But one of his favorite themes was learn, baby, learn. And so you look at the landscape in Newark today, and you say to yourself, Martin Luther King Boulevard in the city of Newark is not only the educational boulevard in Newark, but is the educational boulevard in the state of New Jersey. There is no other street in the state that has so many educational institutions along it. From New Jersey Institute of Technology, from Rutgers University, and the former Central, Essex County College, St. Benedict's, Arts High, and then, of course, Robert Reed II. This is the educational corridor of the state of New Jersey. And if it is, there is absolutely no excuse for us today to look around and say to the children of the city of Newark, there is no place in one of these colleges and universities for you. To do less is not only to shame the memory of Dr. King, but indeed to betray that dream, to betray that legacy. And to say to them, the sacrifices they made were sacrifices that were made in vain. And we cannot allow that to happen. And I'll fast forward to the struggle in South Africa. New Jersey played a very prominent role in that. And that role was led by none other by Assemblyman Willie Brown, the late Assemblyman Willie Brown. And New Jersey, back in 1985, was the first state in the nation to promulgate the notion of divestiture. And he worked in the legislature with the then Governor Kane and Chuck Hytian. They were both Republicans. Assemblyman Brown was a Democrat. But he knew that in order for that to pass, he had to get that support. And he did. And where did he start his campaign? The corridors of Essex County College. Essex has always been an open institution where all kinds of ideas flow. And he talked about divestiture, and people talked about economic impact of New Jersey. And say, how can you weigh that economic impact on New Jersey versus the slaughter that was taking place in South Africa? And so Willie Brown, our own Assemblyman Willie Brown, led the charge in the state of New Jersey. And New Jersey passed a divestiture law before the nation itself did. The United States Congress did not do that until a year later on. And so the nexus between what happened here in Newark, Essex County College, under the leadership of our own Assemblyman Willie Brown, and what was happening in South Africa was very, very profound, because he realized, as all the civil rights and freedom fighters have recognized, there was really no separation between what was happening here and what was taking place in South Africa. And the freedom fighters here, Junius Williams included, Imam Mubaraka, and of course, during the rebellion in '67, he, and you'll find that in his book, right on Martin Luther King Boulevard at the corner of St. James Church, he found himself looking down the barrel of a shotgun by a police officer. One little move, and he would have been shot, and nobody would have known the difference. Indeed, one of those who was killed was shot 39 times, and to this day, nobody has been convicted for that slaughter. The byword was, there were 3 police officers with this man, but we don't know how he died and who shot him 39 times. There was a witness. That witness was never called. And so what happened in Newark was a mirror, perhaps behind closed doors, of what was going on, not just in the South, but also in South Africa. And so we come full circle today as we celebrate the legacy of Dr. King. And I concur wholeheartedly with Dr. Junius Williams. It's not a day that we should just go to the malls and shop, or sleep in bed, or recite the I Dream speech. It always calls for action. To do less is to say to the Dr. King and all those who died in the struggle that their death and their bloodshed was in vain. And we, the living today, cannot allow that to happen. Thank you.
I always love about Essex County College and Newark is that there's always people around us, and sometimes I don't think we appreciate it, who can help us make those connections, who have lived the legacy and the life of the things that we read about but can't touch because they've passed now. But we have people in our midst who can help us to understand and to connect with those things that we can't physically connect with. So I want to take this moment just to suggest to you all out there that those folks who are around you, take this as an opportunity to talk to them, to learn what they experienced, to learn what they know, read their works if they have works that they've written, and then ask them questions about the things that they've written so that you make the connection more completely about what was written. And so that as you do that, I would suggest that Dr. Yamba is, I've heard him speak many times over the years, and I think that every time he speaks, I learn something new. It's like when Larry Ham comes up to speak, or when Amir Baraka used to come up to speak. I always have Amir Baraka here once every year and a half for the programs that we have for the Africana Institute, because he was such a treasure. The wisdom that he brings to the table could be listened to. I can listen to him once a month. And every time it's something new, something fresh, but something that makes a connection to something that I think I need to know but if I didn't sit at the feet of the elders, I would never know. So sit at the feet of the elders and learn something that you didn't know yesterday. At this time, we're going to have a poetry reading. Well, actually, let me say one more thing about Dr. Yamba. As the director of the Africana Institute, I want to give Dr. Yamba a round of applause, because Dr. Yamba came up with the idea of the Africana Institute, and so we're so honored to be able to bring to life his vision. And I see myself as a steward of the Africana Institute. People say, oh, it's a nice office. I say, yeah, it is, but it's not my office, it's your office, it's our office. And so that this space is something that enables us to do something that a great man who is here before us envisioned, and that we now have the opportunity and the responsibility to take it to the next level. And so that's the responsibility I live with. And so if I'm not doing it, then you guys take me to task. Not just Dr. Gibson or the dean. I want you all to make sure that we do what we have to do to make this institution all that it can be, and that we do it to the best of its ability. Because I know that whatever we do, we can do it better, and that we can do it to a greater extent. And to get there, it takes all of your help. And two people who I want to thank for all of their help right now, and one is Jaja Shakur, and the other one is Richard Baldwin. Let's give them a round of applause, because without the two of them, it would be very difficult for us to do what we do in the Africana Institute and all of our student workers and volunteers. So at this time, we're going to hear some of the works of Amiri Baraka, and hear something about Amiri Baraka by a student here who is a aspiring poet and actress in her own regard, and that's Jaleesa McGitchen. And so if you would please join us on stage now. Let's give her a round of applause.
Good evening, everybody. Leroy Jones was born on October 7, 1934, in Newark, New Jersey. He attended Rutgers University as well as Howard University. He spent 3 years in the U.S. Air Force. Upon return, he attended Columbia University in New York City. Under the name Leroy Jones, he wrote pieces such as Blue People and The Dutchman, which earned him his literary reputation. In 1959, Jones took a trip to Cuba that changed his writing forever. He became more focused on the poverty and oppression of his people. Upon return to the United States, and after the death of Malcolm X, Leroy Jones changed his name to Amiri Imamu Baraka, converted to Islam, and became active in the Black nationalist movement. Baraka was very controversial. In 2002, Baraka became New Jersey's poet laureate, but the title was soon eliminated due to the negative feedback of his poem, Somebody Blew Up America. Amiri Baraka continued to write and has remained at the front lines of the upliftment and empowerment of Black people. Sadly, Amiri Baraka passed away on January 9, 2014, in the great city where he was born and loved, Newark, New Jersey. Even through his death, his poems and literary works will continue to be shared throughout the world. The poem that I'm going to share with you today was written by Amiri Baraka, and it's called Kaaba. A closed window looks down on a dirty courtyard, and Black people call across, or scream, or walk across, defying physics in the stream of their will. Our world is full of sound. Our world is more lovely than anyone, though we suffer and kill each other, and sometimes fail to walk the air. We are beautiful people with African imaginations full of masks and dances and swelling chants, with African eyes and noses and arms. Though we sprawl in gray chains in places full of winters, when what we want is sun. We have been captured, brothers, and we labor to make our getaway into ancient image, into a new correspondence with ourselves and our Black families. We read magic, and we need the spells to rise up, return, destroy, and create what will be the sacred words. I met Amiri Baraka on Juneteenth, 2013. And I met him on South 10th Street in Newark, New Jersey. I had always wanted to meet Amiri Baraka. From writing back when I was younger to opening up textbooks and reading about him, he was just someone that literally touched my heart. I thought that when I went to Juneteenth, I was just gonna go and shake his hand and, say, oh, hi, nice to meet you, and walk away. But it was totally the opposite. We went, we sat down, we met his wife, Amina. She opened up her house to everyone. He sat on a porch and they told us about the Black Revolution and how writing is important. And he even said, don't be afraid if you read off a paper. That just means you know how to read. And I found it very intriguing that this person who traveled the world and everyone looked up to him, from Maya Angelou to Sonia Sanchez, it was just amazing that someone that was right here in our own backyard was so open and full of wisdom and knowledge. His works will forever live on in our textbooks and in our hearts. Rest in peace, Imam Baraka.
Thank you very much, Jaleesa. I want to just say a couple of words real quick about Brother Baraka, Amiri Baraka. One is that, I interviewed him just at the end of last year, and if you want to see the interview, it's playing on the college's television station now. And he said some things that I think that were really pointed, and I think that it would be interesting for you all to hear them. One, the last time I saw him was in December the 4th, when they had a tribute to his blues people. And I said, how you doing, brother? And he said, I'm good. He said, and then he asked me how I was doing, and I said I was doing all right. And he said, yeah, when further had the conversation, his bottom line was that I'm fighting a good fight. That was his last words to me. I'm fighting a good fight. And that was a refrain that he would say often. And when I asked him about his legacy on the interview, I asked him just like this. I said, what are we going to say about you in 10, 20, 50, 100 years down the road? What do you think people should say? What do you want people to say about Amiri Baraka? And he said he would like people to see that he was a soldier, that he was someone who fought for change and believed that change was possible, and that he was committed to that, to working towards change throughout the course of his life. And I believe that we can definitely look at his struggles and see that was the case. If you attended his funeral, you would hear all the comments by people, hundreds of people who were there talking, and the people who spoke on stage, and that's what they said. If you went to his wake, that's what people said, that he was someone who was fighting the good fight, that he was a soldier. And that I think that the best thing we can learn from him is to live by example, and he lived by example. And he was unregretting in his example that he set, and that he was an evolving person. I think his son said this in the funeral, was that he was an evolving person, and that we should see ourselves as evolving people. If you see yourself the same today as you were 10 years ago, then maybe you stopped growing. Maybe you stopped reading. Maybe there's something else that you have to do to contribute to society in another way, because society is moving on. Are you moving on, or are you being stagnant? So let's make sure that we're moving on and that we're making those contributions. I want to bring to the stage one of our great poets here at Essex County College, and a professor and a counselor here at Essex County College, Sister Daphne Binyard. Let's bring her to the stage and hear some great works from her. We're coming up now. We have a young adjunct professor who's here today, and he's been doing some great things in town, and we're glad that he's here to join us. His name is Sean Battle, and I encourage you to listen to his words. He resonates oftentimes in very similar ways to Amiri Baraka in his early days. Mr. Sean Battle. Mr. Battle.
Good afternoon, everyone. I unfortunately did not have the chance to personally meet Amiri Baraka. However, his poetry, particularly the poem Black Art, has resonated with me since 2009, where I first learned of the Black Arts movement. And seeing him live when the Dodge Poetry Festival was first brought to Newark was one of the most transforming experiences of my life. The only thing that bested it was this past weekend. I attended Amiri's funeral, where I saw over 30 speakers basically speak Amiri into life. This is my way of capturing that experience. The meeting. After Amiri Baraka, for Ras Baraka. Like a full cup, his coffin overflowed, flooded the audience with one more river of truth to swim and sip from. Behold the bridge between bourgeois and bebop, between adjunct and junkie, classroom and color. We raise fist and voice as 30 speakers let Amiri use them once more, show out what part of he is in them. The blues people who scat with saxophone and singing voice, poets bouncing verse off walls, forcing us to holler. Never do we duck or mute. We let us be hit with this heat, squeezing the sweat from our foreheads. For some, this tell-all is comfortable humidity compared to actions lived, loved, and lost in a volcanic past. From times of war comes strategy to be used at the right moment. Sister Soldier spoke of one revealed to us on this day. Let it be known, she said, that your father was a man of action, and if he laid down now, it's because he's a political strategist. Of all the times Amiri could have transitioned, his son marches toward Newark's marital office. All eyes on Ras. Some may call this implant of voting how-to tacky, but truth tellers know little separates politic from pavement. If we do not use this river flowing from his coffin to call for action, disgrace we are to his body of flesh and verb. Thank you.
Okay, well, that almost brings our program to a close. Let's give him another round of applause. We had some great feedback, some great insights today.